You think grief is something you feel, sadness, loss, emptiness, but why does your chest hurt? Why does your throat tighten? Before you even start crying, why does your stomach drop like you've been punched even though nothing touched you? Most people don't ask. They say heartbreak, or stress response, or it just hurts. But that's not an answer. When you really ask why grief can feel like physical pain, you find something that changes how you see your own body. Not as something that reacts to emotion, but as the thing generating it. Let me show you. Start with something simple. You felt it. That pressure behind your sternum, not sharp, not stabbing, just dense. A heaviness that sits inside your ribs like weight. Your throat tightens, swallowing feels wrong. Your stomach goes hollow. Food stops sounding like food. Your arms feel weak. Your skin feels cold. Your breathing changes even if you're sitting perfectly still. Nothing hit you, no bruise. No cut, no impact, and yet your body is acting like something is damaged. Here's the first conclusion. Grief isn't a feeling, it's your body switching modes, and once you accept that, the pain stops being mysterious. Because your body has only a few ways to signal urgency: pressure, tightness, nausea, heat, cold, shaking, ache. Those aren't emotional symptoms, those are body outputs. The system doesn't write you a paragraph, it flips switches. Now we earn the mechanism, and we start where the body is most honest: physical pain. Think about pain for a second. Pain feels like information, like a warning light, like a message that says something is wrong. But pain doesn't behave like a message, pain behaves like a command. Touch something hot, not warm, hot enough to burn. Your hand snaps away, fast, automatic. That withdrawal happens in about 200 milliseconds, 0.2 of a second. Before you consciously decide anything, you don't debate it, you don't weigh options, you don't negotiate, your body moves first. Then your mind catches up and says, that was hot, that's the order. And it's not an accident, it's the design. Pain is not a readout, it's your body forcing a decision before you finish thinking. It steals attention, it narrows your world, it changes posture. You guard the area, you stop using it, you protect it without trying. Even your face changes, muscles tighten, breath shortens, your entire system reorganizes around one instruction: stop, protect, change behavior. Now here's the strange part. Pain doesn't scale perfectly with damage. A paper cut can feel huge, a broken bone can feel oddly dull at first, and sometimes pain shows up when there's nothing left to protect. Phantom limb pain, old injuries that still flare, pain that appears because the system thinks you might be in danger again. Because pain isn't how broken are you, pain is how urgent is this. It's the body's way of saying, I don't have time for you to understand this. Move. That's why pain can be blunt and unfair and overwhelming. It isn't trying to be accurate, it's trying to be effective. Think of it like a fire alarm. If the alarm only went off when the building was already collapsing, it would be useless. So it's tuned to overreact. A little smoke can trigger a full siren. Better to panic early than stay calm too long. That's why pain can feel disproportionate. Because the point isn't fairness, the point is compliance. And once you see pain this way, you can see what grief is doing. Because grief also steals attention. It also narrows your world. It also changes posture. It also changes breathing. It also changes appetite. You move slower. Your shoulders round, your eyes stop scanning the room and start staring through it. Your voice gets quieter or tighter, or both. Your body starts acting like it needs to conserve something or protect something, not because grief is poetic, because grief is a threat state. Same alarm, different trigger. Now that sounds extreme. So ask the next question. Why would your body treat loss as threat? Why would it flip into emergency mode when nothing is physically attacking you? Here's the illusion you've been living with. Emotions happen in your mind and the body responds. That's how it feels. But the body doesn't wait for your opinion. The body runs programs, fast ones, old ones, programs built to keep you alive. And when something important changes in your world, the body changes state first. That's what nervous systems do. They turn meaning into muscle and chemistry. Meaning becomes breathing. Meaning becomes heart rhythm. Meaning becomes gut motion. So what meaning does loss carry? Not sadness, not a bad day, not a mood. Loss means the world is now less stable because connection isn't just comfort, connection is infrastructure. For most of human history, being alone wasn't just lonely, it was exposure, less protection, less warmth, less shared vigilance, less backup when something goes wrong, more risk. And you can see how deep this runs if you look at the simplest case, a baby. A baby doesn't miss a caregiver in a philosophical way. A baby loses regulation, breathing changes, crying starts, body temperature shifts, the whole organism destabilizes. That isn't learned sadness, that's biology. Connection is literally part of the control system. So the nervous system learned a brutal rule. Connection equals safety, not spiritually, biologically. So the nervous system uses the harshest tool it has. It makes disconnection feel like damage. It makes absence feel like injury, not as punishment. As control, if separation didn't hurt, you wouldn't fix it, you wouldn't search, you wouldn't return, you drift. And drift, for a social animal, is how you get exposed. So the brain repurposes the same architecture it uses for physical protection. It takes the injury alarm and points it at social rupture, because the point is behavior. Physical pain makes you protect tissue. Social pain makes you restore connection. You can see that logic in animals without any language at all. Separate a young mammal from a caregiver and the body doesn't become sad, it becomes loud, vocalizing, agitated, moving, searching. The system is trying to close distance, and when distance closes, the body downshifts. Breathing slows, muscles soften, heart rhythm becomes more flexible, the program completes. That's what grief is when the distance can't be closed. The program runs, but the target is gone. So it keeps trying, it keeps checking, it keeps scanning the world for the missing pattern. A stable bond tells your body the environment is predictable, the threat level is lower, you can downshift. A stable bond lets your body spend less energy on scanning and more on repair. And a stable bond isn't only someone is near me, it's someone will respond, someone will return, someone is part of the pattern of my world. Your brain builds that pattern quietly, day after day, without asking you. So when a bond disappears, your body doesn't file it under sad thought, it files it under something that kept me safe is gone. And safety isn't abstract. Safety is breathing. Safety is muscle tone. Safety is how tightly you hold yourself together. So when loss happens, the system doesn't just feel sad, it recalibrates, it shifts toward vigilance, it moves into a mode built for problems. That's why grief can feel physical, because the body treats it as physical. Now we reach the cliff, the part most people have never considered. Pain and grief feel similar for a reason, but wait, it gets stranger. Your brain doesn't file loss as emotion. Here's the disturbing part. Your brain doesn't treat social loss as sadness. It treats it like injury, not the same as a broken bone, but close enough that the machinery overlaps. There are circuits whose job is to detect bodily damage. There are circuits whose job is to detect separation, rejection, isolation. And the overlap isn't poetic, it's built into the hardware. Here's a way to see it without jargon. Imagine a simple game. You're included for a while. You're part of the pattern. You speak, someone responds. You laugh, someone mirrors it. Your body relaxes without you noticing, because inclusion isn't a thought. It's a signal to downshift. Then you're suddenly ignored. No explanation, no warning. People look through you like you're not there. Nothing touched you, and yet something changes immediately. Your face gets warm, your stomach tightens, your breathing rises into your chest. You start holding yourself differently, smaller, more careful. You begin scanning. Who looked at me? Who didn't? What did I do? That mental loop feels like emotion, but the loop is riding on a body state. The body has already tightened the frame. Even your pain sensitivity can change. The alarm turns the volume knob. Because the system is preparing for exposure, that's the point. The brain isn't sorting the world into physical and emotional. It's sorting the world into safe or unsafe, predictable or unstable, connected or exposed. And when the category flips from safe to unsafe, the body runs the programs it already has. The same ones built to protect you from impact, infection, injury. Because in the body's accounting, isolation is risk. So the something is wrong alarm lights up. Not as a thought, as a state, one set of systems acts like a distress amplifier. Not where is the pain, but something is wrong. Another set maps internal body state, your heart rate, your breathing, your gut, your temperature, your tension. It builds the felt sense of what it's like to be inside your body right now. That's why distress shows up as sensation. Your brain doesn't announce threat with words, it announces threat with the body, pressure in the chest, constriction in the throat, hollowing in the stomach, a heaviness that makes your limbs feel slow, a coldness that makes the room feel bigger than it should. That's not metaphor, that's the system using the language it has. Because pain is the body's universal urgent signal. And once you understand that, the chest pain makes sense. Your chest is one of the loudest places your body can broadcast state. Breathing lives there, heart rhythm lives there, tension lives there. Change those, and you feel it as a physical event. This is the midpoint reframe. Grief isn't abstract emotion floating in your mind. It's a threat program written into your body maps, and you experience it as pain because pain is how the program speaks. Now, you might think this is just a metaphor the brain uses, like it's pretending the pain is physical. But it's not pretending, because the only way the brain can communicate urgency to you is through your body. Your brain doesn't have direct access to you as a thinker. It has access to muscles, to organs, to breathing, to heart rhythm. So when something matters, it changes the body and lets you feel the change. That's why grief has a location. Chest, throat, gut. Those places are not random. They're the loudest parts of your internal map. Your chest is where breathing lives. And breathing is the fastest way to change your entire internal state. A small shift in breathing changes everything. It changes carbon dioxide levels. It changes how hard your heart has to pump. It changes the pressure inside your rib cage. It changes the sensation of air hunger. So when your system tightens breathing, you don't feel a concept. You feel pressure. Your throat is another loud place. It's full of reflexes, swallowing, breathing, vocalization, crying. When the body is in threat mode, that region tightens. Not because it's symbolic, because it's protective, and your gut is a third loud place. The gut isn't just a tube for food, it's a sensor array. It has its own nervous system. It's loaded with chemical detectors. It's constantly reporting safe or unsafe. That's why threat changes your stomach before it changes your thoughts, because the gut is one of the first places the body reprioritizes. So when grief hits and your appetite collapses, it isn't willpower, it's allocation. The body is shifting energy away from digestion and toward vigilance. That also explains the weird contradictions. You can feel heavy and empty at the same time. Because the gut has slowed and tightened, you can feel tired and wired at the same time because the muscles are braced while the system is draining. You can feel cold even in a warm room because circulation and sweat can make the skin read the environment differently. That's why grief doesn't feel like a thought, it feels like weather inside you. And the deeper reason is simple: a nervous system's job is to keep you alive. And it does that by controlling the body first. Language comes later, meaning comes later. What you call grief is just the name you give to a body state that's already running. Now go one layer deeper, because grief doesn't just hurt, it can also feel restless, agitated, like you can't settle. You try to lie down and your body won't agree. You try to distract yourself and the pressure is still there. You can't eat, but you also can't relax. You can be exhausted and still feel wired. And it comes in waves, a spike, a crash, then quiet, then it returns. That wave pattern isn't random either, it's chemistry. Connection doesn't only change your mood, connection regulates you, it stabilizes baseline. It lowers the cost of being alive. And it does that through molecules. Reward chemistry, comfort chemistry, safety chemistry, systems that make connection feel like relief. One important component is your endogenous opioid system. Not an outside drug, a built-in analgesic and comfort system. It's part of what makes safety feel safe, part of what makes closeness reduce distress, part of what makes a familiar presence change your breathing without you noticing. Here's the mechanical version. When you're around someone who signals safe, your alarm threshold shifts. The volume knob turns down, small threats feel smaller, uncertainty feels less urgent. Your body doesn't have to spend energy preparing for worst case. That downshift is real, and it's chemical. So what happens when the bond disappears? A stabilizing input disappears, and the system has to rebalance without it. And rebalancing is not gentle. The system runs hotter, more scanning, more checking, more searching. Even when there's nothing you can do, that's why grief can feel like you're looking for something. Because the program is literally built to restore safety, it's built to reestablish connection, it pushes attention toward reminders, it pulls your mind back to the missing pattern, it makes certain places and objects glow with importance. And when it can't solve the problem, the program doesn't instantly shut off. Because the system can't just accept missing. Missing is unresolved. Unresolved keeps the alarm online. So it cycles. A reminder hits and the state spikes, then the state burns down. Then you get a little quiet. Then another reminder hits. It can be a sound, a phrase, a time of day, the way light looks in a room. Your body learns these triggers without asking you. And the reason it feels like waves is simple. Your nervous system isn't built to run at maximum alarm forever. It can't. So it surges, then it drops, then it surges again. A control system cycling between activation and partial release. Now make it concrete, because this is where people get confused. They think grief is one thing, a dark cloud, a feeling, but grief is a sequence, a timeline, a cascade. You can feel it unfold if you pay attention to the order. First, detection. Something expected is missing. Sometimes it's obvious. A message doesn't come. A voice isn't there. A chair is empty. Sometimes it's smaller. A song, a smell, a date, a place. Sometimes it's nothing you can point to. Just waking up and your body realizes, again, that the world has changed. Absence is a signal. The brain expects patterns. When a pattern breaks, it flags it, and that flag propagates. Then, the autonomic shift. Safety mode to threat mode. Your nervous system doesn't think in paragraphs, it thinks in states. Threat mode changes priorities, heart rate shifts, breathing shifts, blood flow shifts. Skin can cool as circulation redistributes, hands can get slightly clammy, jaw tightens, shoulders rise, even your eyes change. More scanning, less softness, digestion drops in priority, muscles brace. Your body becomes less flexible and more ready. That's what vigilance looks like. Not fear as a concept, readiness as a setting. And now the sensations appear. Chest tightness, not mystical, Breathing mechanics. When breathing moves upward into the chest, the rib cage lifts, the muscles between the ribs tighten, the diaphragm moves differently. The sternum area starts to feel compressed. That compression is the body saying, stay ready. Throat tightness, protective tone, a reflex pattern that narrows the airway and changes swallowing, a body preparing for impact. A body that doesn't fully trust what comes next, gut drop, appetite loss, nausea, digestion is expensive, threat mode pulls resources away from the gut, motility changes. The stomach can feel empty and heavy at the same time, and because the gut is wired directly into the nervous system, it becomes one of the first places distress shows up. That's why grief can erase appetite in minutes. That's why food can feel like cardboard. That's why you can feel nauseous with nothing in your stomach. You feel it as something is wrong, even if your mind hasn't named it yet. Now, but wait, there's an even worse part. The chemistry is late. The body shifts first, and then the slower chemicals arrive and lock the state in. Adrenaline is fast. Seconds, cortisol is slower. It rises and peaks later, often around 20 to 40 minutes after the trigger. That means by the time you consciously call it grief, your body may have been running the program for half an hour, because that's how stress systems operate. Fast signal first, slow signal later. The slow signal sustains. It keeps the system from snapping back too quickly, which is exactly why grief can feel like it's in your bones. The body isn't being poetic, it's being biochemical, and once the slow chemistry is in the bloodstream, it starts touching everything. Sleep becomes lighter. Not because you decided to stay awake, because the system is biased toward monitoring. Your body keeps checking the environment. Even in the middle of the night, memory changes too. Certain cues get tagged as important. A song, a place, a phrase. Those cues get louder, not quieter, because the brain is still trying to solve the missing pattern, so grief can feel like it fades and then comes back hard, not because it restarted, because the state never fully cleared. It just dropped below the surface until something pulled it up again. That's what waves are, a control system cycling between activation and partial release. Now we can answer the title without metaphor. What's between grief and physical pain? Shared machinery, the same alarm architecture, the same distress amplification, the same internal body maps, same purpose, force behavior under threat. Physical pain says protect your body. Grief says protect your world. Because losing someone isn't just losing a memory, it's losing stability, losing predictability, losing a regulator. And your nervous system treats that as urgent, so it does what it always does under urgency. It changes your state, and you feel that state is pain. Now we prove it, not with vibes, with physical outputs. The kind of proof your body can't ignore. First proof, timing. Go back to the hot surface. Your hand withdraws in about 200 milliseconds. Then you feel pain. Then you name it. Grief has the same shape. You can be fine, neutral, normal. And then a sound hits and your chest tightens and your stomach drops and your throat closes. And only after that do you realize what just happened, because the body moved first. Fast systems fire before slow awareness. That architecture is everywhere in biology. Blink reflex, startle reflex, flinch. The body is built to move first and explain later. And grief uses that same architecture. That's why it can feel like it hijacks you. It's not asking, it's executing. Now, proof 2, measurable output. Threat mode changes the rhythm of your body. One simple example is heart rate variability. Most people think heart rate is just how fast, but your heart doesn't beat like a metronome. Even at rest, the time between beats naturally fluctuates. Tiny differences, beat to beat. That fluctuation isn't noise, it's flexibility. It's the system adjusting moment by moment. Threat mode reduces that flexibility. Heart rate variability drops. Not metaphorically, literally fewer fluctuations between beats. Sometimes the difference is only a few milliseconds beat to beat. But that tiny variability is the signature of a system that can adapt. Threat mode reduces it. The beat pattern becomes more uniform, more locked, more ready. That's what vigilance looks like in numbers, and grief pushes you toward that state. Because the body treats the world as less stable, less safe, less predictable, so it clamps down. Breathing shows it too. Threat breathing is higher and shorter, more chest, less belly. Shorter inhale, shorter exhale, less variability. Breathing becomes tactical even when you're doing nothing, and because breathing is one of the fastest levers the body has, it amplifies everything else. A slightly faster breath makes the heart beat differently. It changes internal pressure in the chest. It changes the sensation of air hunger. So the chest pressure isn't in your imagination, it's in the mechanics. And once breathing changes, the sensations in the chest change. That's why grief feels like pressure. Because breathing is one of the main ways your body broadcasts state to you. Change the breath, and the entire internal landscape changes with it. This is what it means to say grief is biological. Not just a story you tell yourself, a state your body enters, a program that runs. So now it finally makes sense. Grief hurts because your body is running a threat program. The same architecture that protects you from injury can activate when the world becomes less safe. Then chemistry arrives late and sustains the state. That's why it comes in waves. That's why it lingers. And notice what that implies. The pain isn't there to describe the loss. It's there to make the loss impossible to ignore. It forces your attention back to the missing thing. It forces your body into a searching posture. It keeps the alarm on long enough that you change your behavior around the new reality. That's why grief can feel like it takes over your whole day, because the system isn't designed to be a quiet background emotion. It's designed to reorganize you. Same alarm, same architecture, different trigger. Here's the cold final sentence. Grief isn't something you feel. It's something your body starts doing. Awareness comes last. It always arrives late. Not comfort, truth. And if that's true, then the next question isn't philosophical, it's mechanical. What else have you been calling a feeling? That was actually your body switching modes long before your mind caught up?